Paano na-form itong mga magagandang landforms and bodies of water na ito? Sige nga. Ano sa tingin nyo yung reason kung bakit meron tayong ganitong magagandang sceneries? Gaya ng mga beach, ng bundok, hills, yan, coves, rivers. Pwede kayo mag-send ng sagot sa ating chat box. Archipelago. So yeah, the Philippines is an archipelago. Yan. Paano kaya naging archipelago yung Pilipinas? So, being an archipelago, marami tayong magagandang bodies of water and mga bundok and vulkan. So how are these things formed? Bakit tayo nagkaroon ng mga magagandang cave? Or paano tayo nagkaroon ng magagandang caves? Yan. Mga ilog. Yan, may mga sumasagot na sa chat. How about the others? Hala, nakatulog na ata sila ulit dahil hapon na, no? Nakakaantok naman talaga tong oras natin. Ayan, may nadagdag pang isa. Nasagot. Sige, may mga nagsabi na dahil daw sa mga natural processes in nature, like weathering. Ayan, dalawa na yung nagsabi ng weathering. Tapos may nagsabi ng weathering and erosion. Sabi naman na isa, volcanic eruption and tectonic plate collision. Meron din nagsabi ng plate tectonic movement. Okay? You are all correct. These are the processes, interaction of the subsystems daw. That is true. So that is the reason, those are the reasons why we have these beautiful scenic places. Those natural processes that lead to the formation of landforms and bodies of water. These processes can be classified as exogenic and endogenic processes. What are their similarities? First, they are natural events that change the structure of the earth. They change how the earth appears on the outside. And this event, as I have said, can be categorized as exogenic when the event occurs on the surface. No, talagang sa ibabaw ng earth nangyayari yung mga processes. Kaya nga sa tinawag na exogenic. The prefix exo refers to the outside. Okay, so sa labas ng earth, sa surface mismo ng earth nangyayari itong mga proseso na to. While endogenic processes happen inside or within the earth. So these are events that are caused by the movement of materials in the inner layers of the earth. Involved na dito yung mga layers pa na nasa ilalim ng crust. Exogenic, bakit nangyayari itong mga events na to? Siyempre, it needs energy. And the source of energy is the sun. And external factors like subsystem interact for these exogenic processes to occur. For endogenic processes, ito naman, it is driven by the Earth's internal heat. Nanggaling mismo sa Earth, yung energy na nag-cause ng endogenic processes. Yung init sa loob ng mundo. Yung nagpapagalaw ng rocks and other materials within the Earth, which affects the appearance of the Earth on the outside. Examples of exogenic processes include weathering, erosion, deposition, and sedimentation. And for endogenic processes, examples include plate movement, magmatism, earthquakes, metamorphism, diastrophism, or deformation. Yung endogenic, i-discuss natin to sa mga susunod pa na araw. For today, we are going to focus on exogenic process. For exogenic process, there are 4 major events kasama. One is weathering, followed by erosion, then deposition, and sedimentation. Okay, weathering can be classified as physical or chemical. For erosion, there are several agents which include gravity, wind, water, and ice. Yung deposition naman, pag sinabi nating deposition, this is the dropping off or the collection of sediments that were weathered and eroded. So pag basag-basag yung bato, lumiit yung bato through weathering, na-transport siya ng erosion, may ipon at makokolekta yung mga bato. Usually sa mga catch basins or sa lower areas, no? Doon sila nasasalo at naiipon. And these materials will be compacted and cemented dahil pag nagpatong-patong na yung layers ng sediments na yan, so squeeze sila, makakompress with the presence of water, they will be cemented and they will form rocks. Kung natatandaan nyo pa yung lesson natin last quarter about the different types of rocks, anong group of rocks ang na-form sa dulo ng exogenic process? Sige nga, send natin ang sagot sa chat. What type of rocks are formed after all of these exogenic processes? Di ba may tatlo yun? So, alin doon sa tatlo? Yan na, may mga sumasagot na sa chat. And you are correct. Sedimentary rocks. Kaya nga, yung dulong process is sedimentation. Compaction and cementation. Okay? Ano yung naipon? Sediments. Kaya nga, tinawag siya na sedimentary rocks. Yung dalawa pa, yung igneous at yung metamorphic, sila naman ay na-form through endogenic processes. O, i-discuss natin sila as we meet again next week. Ngayon, ito muna. So, weathering and erosion muna ang pag-usapan natin. Pag sinabi natin weathering, this is the breaking down of rocks as a result of exposure to environment. So, rocks can be broken into smaller pieces hanggang sa umabot sa talagang maliliit at pinong particles, no? Pwede siyang maging sand, maging silt, and yung smallest is clay. Then, after the rocks are broken down, they may be transported. So, yung transportation naman of those sediments is called erosion. Okay? Most of the time, magka-attach to talaga to si weathering and erosion. Kasi after the rocks break, they are transported. Or may mga ibang weathering processes na erosion na rin siya at the same time. So, habang gumagalaw yung rocks, nababasag siya into pieces or mas lumiliit siya. So, kaya laging magka-attach to si weathering at si erosion. Pero magkaibang process sila because weathering is the breaking down, erosion is the transport of the rock sediments. Weathering has two types. We have physical and we have chemical weathering. Anong pinagkaiba nitong dalawa na to? Sige nga, tatawag ako sa chat. Tatawag ako, sino ang pwedeng sumagot? O baka may gusto mag-volunteer sa inyo. Anong pinagkaiba ng mechanical or physical sa chemical weathering? Yes, Chelsea.
Sir, in physical weathering po, it is the breakdown of rocks into sediments without changing its composition. While in chemical weathering po, it alters the rocks as a result of the exposure to different substances.
Alright, very good. So, pag sinabi natin physical, the rocks break physically, as in they just get smaller without changing their chemical composition. Kung halimbawa, for example, ano bang example natin? Halimbawa, malachite, no? Malachite siya, na-expose siya sa environment, nahati, nabitak, nadurog, at the end of the process, malachite pa rin siya. Diba? Lumiit lang, naging finer or smaller lang yung kanyang piraso. While for chemical, sabi nga ni Chelsea, after the rocks are exposed to different environmental substances, they may change their chemical composition as they break down. So, lumiliit na sila, nadudurog na sila, at the same time, nagbabago pa yung chemical composition. And sometimes, no, the breaking down of the chemical happens in the ionic level. Diba, rocks are composed of minerals. And these minerals are composed of metals and non-metals. So, nagsiseparate yung ionic components, yung the positive ions na metals and negative ions na non-metals, and nagre-react sila with other substances in the environment. And at the end of the process, they form another mineral that can be easily broken down as compared to the parent or the original rock or mineral. Based on the video that you watched, what are the different processes that are considered to be physical or mechanical weathering? Sige nga, send natin yung sagot sa chat box. How about the others? Kising pa ba tayo? Ayan, meron nagsabi, frost action, breaking, cracking, and grinding. Oh, sige. Ayun yung pagkakadurog. Pero may mga specific na processes and factors na involved dun sa physical weathering na yon. Ice wedging, plant wedging, frost action, exfoliation, abrasion, root wedging. Ganun na. Let physical, frost action, exfoliation, abrasion, root wedging, and alright. Sige. For physical, tama po kayo. Sa exfoliation, frost wedging. Another term for frost wedging is frost action or freeze to weathering. And then we have abrasion. Meron ding plant or root wedging or plant growth or root growth, root action. Yan, sa iba't ibang reference, iba-iba yung tawag sa kanila. Pero pare-pareho lang naman yung nangyayari. And then, kasama din yung animal and human activities sa physical weathering ng rocks. For chemical, Ano naman examples ng chemical weathering na diniscuss doon sa video na pinanood ninyo? May ilan na nag-send na ng sagot dito sa chat. How about the others? Kung natatandaan niyo pa. Ayan, oxidation and carbonation. Yung diniscuss sa video. Pero, dadagdagan natin siya ng isa pa. Hydrolysis. Yung carbonation, another name for that is solution or leaching. Sige, isa-isay natin sila. First is exfoliation. Di ba parang sa balat natin, pag nag-exfoliate tayo ng skin, tinatanggal natin yung upper layers, yung dead skin natin. So, sa rocks din, pag sinabi exfoliation, natatanggal din yung upper layer of the rocks. So, they crack and they peel off from their places. Tulad dito nasa picture. Ayan, unti-unting nalalaglag yung mga bato. Bakit nagkakaroon nito ng exfoliation? Bakit nalalaglag yung upper layer? May dalawang dahilan. Una, thermal expansion and contraction. Diba? When materials are exposed to higher temperature, they tend to expand. Kasi yung molecules nila bumibilis, no? Yung movement, at habang bumibilis, lumalayo yung distance nila sa isa't isa. Kaya nag-expand. And then kapag lumalamig naman, nangyayari, naglo-lose ng energy yung mga molecules, bumabagal, and they become closer to each other. So yun yung reason ng contraction. Now, rocks are rigid material. They are not flexible na pwedeng basta lang mag-expand and mag-contract. Habang nag-expand and nag-contract yung rock, they break into pieces. So the repeated heating and cooling of materials cause this rigid substance to crack and separate. So halimbawa, di ba sa umaga, maaraw, mainit, tapos biglang sa gabi, sobrang lamig. Or for example, isang season, mainit, and another season, malamig. So the changes in temperature cause the rock to break. Okay? I don't know if you experienced this, no? Kapag mayroon kayong glass sa bahay, pag binusan mo siya ng tubig na mainit, no? And then pag tinanggal mo yung tubig na mainit, and then binusan mo ng malamig, mababasag yung glass. Ganun din yung nangyayari sa bato. Pag biglang mainit, biglang malamig, Hello? Ano nangyari? Nag-stop share ako. Oo nga eh. Ano yung last na narinig ko na sinabi ko? Sorry, what happened? Ano nangyari? Ba't ako na-mute? What was the last thing you heard I said? Ayun. Have you heard yung yung sa glass? Narinig nyo pa yon? Hindi na. Okay. So kapag may glass, 'di ba yung baso na babasagin, pag bigla mo siyang binuhusan ng tubig na mainit, pwedeng mag-break na lang bigla yung baso. Or halimbawa, mainit siya, tapos tinanggal mo yung laman ng tubig na mainit, tapos bigla mong sinalinan ng malamig, mababasag yung baso. Kasi rigid nga siya, hindi flexible yung glass because of its molecules. So, ganun din sa rocks, no? Kapag mainit sa umaga, tapos biglang malamig sa gabi, or mainit sa isang season, and then another season, lalamig naman siya, unti-unting nababasag yung mga bato. And as they break, they eventually fall from their location. So, nagpipill up siya. Another reason for exfoliation is the removal of overlying rocks. Diba? Through time, so, nagde-deposition, mapapatungan ng panibagong layer, mapapatungan pa ulit ng isa pang layer, ng isa pa. Yung mga layers na nasa ilalim, anong nangyayari? Naiipit sila. Okay? Halimbawa, mayroon kayong pile ng pillows, di ba? So, pinagpatong-patong mo yung pillows. Dahil yung sa bigat ng mga pillows na nasa ibabaw, yung pillow na nasa ilalim, nasa-squeeze. Okay? Pag unti-unti mong tinanggal yung pillow sa ibabaw, ano mangyayari dun sa pillow na nasa pinaka-ilalim? It will expand. No? Kasi wala na yung bigat na nag-squeeze sa kanya eh. So, it will expand. Ganon din yung nangyayari sa rocks, no? Dahil may patong-patong na layers yung nasa ilalim, naipit yung rock na yon. Pag na-erode yung nasa ibabaw, natanggal yung nasa ibabaw through weathering, mining, whatever event, yung mga nasa ilalim na rocks, they will start to expand again. And since rigid nga itong rocks na to, no, they cannot hold the expansion and retain its shape. Unti-unting nagkakaroon ng crack, ng basag doon sa mga layers na yan, and eventually they will slide off. Okay, so ito yung dalawang reasons kung bakit nagkakaroon ng exfoliation. Thermal, expansion, and contraction, and then the removal of overlying rocks. Another weathering activity is frost wedging. Ito naman, pumapasok yung water sa loob ng bato, sa spaces ng bato at ng lupa or ng rocks and ng soil. Pag lumamig yung panahon, di ba, by 4 degrees Celsius down to 0, water will start to freeze and expand. Sir, bakit ganon? Sabi mo kanina, kapag malamig, nagko-contract yung materials. Bakit yung water, pag nag-freeze, nag-expand? So, iba yung water, kakaiba yung behavior niya. It's because of its hydrogen atom. No? Dahil habang nag-transform yung water into solid, yung distance sa hydrogen ay nagiging equal. Pantay-pantay sila. And that causes the water to expand. Okay? Kaya yung pumasok na tubig dun sa bato, kapag nag-expand siya, unti-unti niyang nahahati yung bato. Okay? Tapos, kapag natunaw, may iwan na ngayon yung space. So, papasukan ulit ng tubig pag umulan, tapos mag-freeze, unti-unti na namang lalaki hanggang sa talagang maghiwalay na ng total yung rock. Okay? Aside from frost wedging, it is also called frost action or freeze to weathering. Mag-freeze, then matutunaw, mag-freeze, then matutunaw yung water inside the rocks. Ito, pwede rin siya sa soil. So, ayan. This is what we call permafrost. Makikita natin tong soil na may mga ice crystals na ganito sa mga malalamig na lugar like Antarctica or yung mga lugar na may mga winter season. So, itong mga ice crystals na to, pinupush niya yung mga particles ng soil away from each other. At kapag dumating na yung hotter season, na warmer season, matutunaw na yung ice at may iwang buhaghag yung lupa. Much worse, syempre, dadalo yung ice na natunaw, tangay-tangay niya yung ilan doon sa mga soil na nahiwa-hiwalay niya or nabuhaghag niya. Another one is abrasion. Abrasion is caused by the movement of sediments or rock section. As they move, they are carried by wind, water, rocks, or ice. They collide. They strike other rocks. Diba pag bumuhos yung malakas na hangin, tatangayin doon yung mga sand, and then magsa-strike sila, magko-collide sila dun sa gilid ng hill or ng bundok. Tapos, magagasgasan nila, ma-abrasion nila. So, eto, yung abrasion is both a weathering and an erosion process. Diba? Kasi nakikita nyo, gumagalaw yung sediment. So, transport is erosion, and at the same time, when they collide with other rocks, they break. So, nagkakaroon din ng weathering. So, the agents that carry the sediments are wind, water, ice, and large rock sections carried by gravity. So, etong picture na to sa upper left part, yan, dati siyang hill na talagang parang bundok yung shape niya. Pero unti-unti, nagbago yung itsura niya. Ayan, naging ganyan na siya. Tapos makikita niyo, may mga lines talaga na ganun. Oh. So, yan yung nasa strike siya ng mga buhangin kapag humangin ng malakas. Ito naman, sa beach, and makikita niyo, may mga rock formations doon. No? May mga butas-butas yung bato. Isa sa mga reason kung ba't nagkakaroon ng butas yung bato kasi yung pag umalon, tangay-tangay ng alon yung mga rock sediments, bumabangga dito sa mga rocks na nasa gilid ng dagat. Okay? Meron din tayong plant wedging. Ito naman. So, yung mga puno na to, di ba, they are really thriving and surviving. So, kapag maliit pa sila, yung root system nila pumapasok sa maliliit na spaces ng rocks at ng soil. And when they grow, definitely, the roots will also grow, mag-expand siya, at unti-unti niya rin itutulak papalayo yung rocks hanggang sa mabasag. So, we call that plant wedging. Others call it root wedging or plant action, plant growth, or root action. Marami dito, makikita niyo yan. Yan sa mga bundok, makikita niyo talagang binabasag ng mga puno yung mga bato. Or ito, sa mga park, sa mga pavement, sa mga garden, makikita niyo talagang yung mga bato ay yung puno, no, gumagapang yung ugat sa bato hanggang sa mabasag at masira nila. Kaya ang ginagawa ng iba sa mga urbanized area, pinuputol nila yung mga puno para hindi daw nasisira yung mga daan. Which is wrong, no? Pwede mo namang i-transfer yung puno. Pwede merong mga machines, may mga equipment na pwedeng hukayin yung puno at ilipat sa ibang lugar. Hindi siya dapat putulin. Kasi nga, itong mga puno na to, mahalaga to for our, una, reduction ng carbon dioxide. Pangalawa, prevention ng flooding and landslide. So, tignan niyo yung ginawa nila sa Manila dahil sa road expansion na gusto nilang gawin, pinutol nila yung mga puno. O, diba? Tingnan mo naman, napakahusay. Imbes na magbibigay ng buhay pa yung mga puno na yon, pinutol at pinatay nila for the road expansion. Ano kayang klaseng pag-iisip? Meron ang mga leaders ng Manila. Hindi ko alam. Kasi nga, yung Dolomite nga gandang-ganda nga sila dun pero harmful naman talaga siya sa environment natin. Okay, o recall natin. Hindi pa pala, isa pa pala. Animals and human activities pa pala. So, yung animals, syempre, tumitira yung iba sa lupa, nagbubungkal, naghuhukay. Yung iba, naglalakad sa lupa, mabibigat yung mga paa nila or matatalas yung mga kuko, unti-unti nilang nasisira at nababasag yung mga bato. For humans naman, activities like mining, construction, agriculture, and urbanization adds to the weathering of rocks. Alright? Review natin. Ano yung iba't ibang processes ng physical weathering? Can you please give one? O baka may gusto mag-raise hand at mag-sumagot through the microphone. Tatawag na lang ako. Pwede ba si Clarence? Hello, Clarence. Pwede ka ba mag-unmute?
Hello po,
Yan.
sir. Medyo unstable po yung internet. Bigay lang po isa, sir.
Yes. One physical or
Abrasion
mechanical
po,
weathering.
sir.
Abrasion. Pangilan sa abrasion, pangatlo. Okay, thank you, Clarence. What else? Baka may mga gusto mag-volunteer, taas ng kamay. Kung wala, sige, tawag tayo. Si Justin Portajada.
Exfoliation po.
Exfoliation. Another one. Princess Miraclaire.
Another example would be frost or ice wedging.
Frost wedging. Frost action or freeze-thaw weathering. Yes, Bernadette, Kimberly, Agwetsa.
There's also root or plant wedging po.
Root or plant wedging or plant growth. Ano pa yung pang 5 at pang 6? Katatapos lang, class light lang na sinundan. Yes, Catalina.
Animal and human activities.
Okay. 5 is animal activity, 6 is human activities. Okay ba? Thumbs up nga po kung nagets na natin ito. Gising pa ba tayo? Nakikinig pa ba? Okay. Very good. May 21, 22 nagising. 23. Ayun, nagising na yung iba. Next. Ito naman, chemical weathering naman. So, una is carbonation, solution, and leaching. Okay? Paano to nangyayari? It requires water. So, water mixes with carbon dioxide, pwedeng carbon dioxide in the air, carbon dioxide from rocks, or carbon dioxide from decaying organisms. Ayan. And as water mixed with carbon dioxide, it forms carbonic acid. The carbonic acid dissolves minerals like limestone and calcite. Kaya another name for carbonation is solution. Okay? Or leaching. Kasi yung leaching, ayun, the dissolution of minerals. Yung ibig sabihin ng leaching. Na-dissolve yung minerals sa water or any solvent. So, eto, halimbawa, itong bato na to, this rock is limestone. So, dahil nag-flow yung carbonated water dito, ayan, unti-unting natunaw yung bato at natangay siya ng tubig. Ito naman, anong tawag dito sa, yan, nakita niyo yung daan, tapos may biglang malaking butas na nag-form. Anong tawag dito? Ayan, may sumagot na sa chat. Ito ay tinatawag na, baka may gustong mag-unmute na lang. Sigaw sa microphone. This is called, wala talaga. Okay, this is called, Ray, dalawang nagsabi sa chat, sinkhole. Yeah, this is sinkhole. So, ano nangyayari sa sinkhole? So, yung carbonated water, nag-infiltrate siya sa soil, pumapasok siya sa soil, pailalim. Pagdating niya dun sa rock layer na may limestone, natutunaw yung limestone. Okay, pwedeng mag-flow yung water horizontally, ground flow, or mag-continue ng infiltration. Tangay-tangay niya yung dissolved na limestone. Hanggang sa magkaroon ng butas sa ilalim, yung mga rocks na nandun sa ibabaw na layer, dahil sa bigat nila at walang nakasalo na rock layer sa loob, they will eventually fall down and cause this sinkholes. So yung carbonation and solution, this is the reason kung bakit may mga magagandang cave features, no? Limestone features inside the caves, which are stalagmites and stalactites. Kasi kapag yung natunaw na limestone ay tangay-tangay ng water, so tutulo siya sa ceiling ng cave at unti-unti siyang mag-form ng stalactite. At bumabagsak yung tubig na may mineral, unti-unti naman siyang naiipon at nagpo-form ng stalagmite. So, yung stalactite sa ibabaw, stalagmite sa ground. Okay? Stalac, C for ceiling, and stalag, G for ground. At kapag patuloy ng pagpatak ng water na may dissolved na calcite or limestone, eventually magdidikit yung stalagmite and stalactite. Ang tawag natin doon sa cave feature na magkadugtong yung stalagmite at stalactite ay limestone columns. Ayan. Pati sa mga beach, makikita ninyo na yung mga rocks sa beach, di ba may mga parang butas-butas sila doon. It's because of carbonation or solution. And then yung sinkholes nga rin, kanina na pinakita ko. Ito pa, another type of chemical weathering is oxidation. So from its name, oxide, kailangan ng action ng oxygen. Saan nanggaling yung oxygen? Una, sa atmosphere. 'di ba? About 24% ng atmosphere natin ay oxygen. Pwede rin nanggaling sa water kasi 'di ba water is H2O, so may oxygen component siya. What happens in oxidation is that mineral reacts with oxygen in water or in the air and causes chemical change. Example, etong pyrite, it happens commonly sa mga iron-rich minerals like pyrite and magnetite. Yan. So, pyrite is FeS, iron sulfide. Okay, magnetite naman is, if I'm not mistaken, iron 2 oxide. Ayan. So, pag na-expose sila sa water or sa atmosphere na may oxygen, mag-oxidize sila at magpo-form sila ng another rock like this one, limonite. Tapos makikita nyo itong limonite, di ba? Ang anong color niya? Reddish brown, orange, or kulay kalawang. Okay? Kasi di ba yung reaction ng iron at ng oxygen leads to formation of rust. So this rusty colored rock called limonite is softer as compared to pyrite. So mas madaling mag-powderize itong limonite na to kaysa sa pyrite after the chemical reaction. Next is hydrolysis. From its name, hydro and lysis, hydro refers to water. Lysis means to break down or to split. So this event happens in the presence again of water. But this time, kanina sa carbonation, water forms carbonic acid. Sa oxidation, yung oxygen ng water or oxygen ng atmosphere yung nagre-react sa minerals. Sa hydrolysis, yung water mismo ang nangyayari, nahahati sa kanyang components. Di ba? Water is H2O. So, pag nahati yung water, magkakaroon ng positive ion, which is hydrogen, H+, at may iwan yung OH, hydroxide, which is negatively charged. So, yung H+, yung metallic hydrogen, magre-react sa non-metals ng minerals. At yung OH negative ay magre-react naman sa metals na present sa minerals. At nangyayari nga itong hydrolysis na ito. Minerals may chemically react with water to form new minerals. The newly formed one is not as hard as the original material. Water splits the ion of the mineral, usually resulting to clay, acidic solution, and free ions or salt. Ito yung end product ng hydrolysis. For example, ito nasa picture natin, rock A is orthoclase feldspar. It is a silicate. Hydrolysis kadalasan nangyayari to sa mga silicates, no? So yung silica ng rock nagre-react with hydroxide. And yung H positive nagre-react naman with the other material na nandoon sa rocks. So orthoclase feldspar transform into kaolinite, which is a source of clay. Kaolinite, ginagamit to sa paggawa ng ceramics. Okay? And feldspar is the rock that is known to be the mother of clay. Kasi yung clay na meron tayo sa soil natin at sa buong paligid sa buong mundo ay nanggaling sa feldspar na nag-undergo ng hydrolysis. Okay? So, reviewin natin. May 3 klase ng chemical weathering. First one, iron-rich rocks after being exposed to atmosphere or water leads to formation of rusty and softer rocks. What do we call this chemical weathering process? O, taas ka ng kamay, gustong sumagot? Ashley.
Oxidation.
Alright, this is called oxidation. How about the next one? Silicate-rich rocks like feldspar gets exposed to water, lead to formation of clay, acidic solution, and ionic substance. Yes, Mira.
Hydrolysis po.
This is hydrolysis. And yung panghuli, water plus carbon dioxide forms carbonic acid that dissolves limestone and calcite. Effect are limestone features such as stalagmites, stalactites, and sinkhole. Jazz.
Carbonation po.
Okay, this is called carbonation, solution, or leaching. Okay? Now, weathering, the rate of weathering, gaano kabilis mangyayaring weathering process is affected by several factors. First one is climate, yung klima ng isang lugar. So dito we consider the moisture or water in the place and then the temperature. So for example, we get the average yearly precipitation and the average yearly temperature. Kapag 0 down yung temperature, siyempre this is the time that water freezes, ito yung mga lugar na nagkakaroon ng frost action. The more water there is, the stronger the frost action that happens. Okay? Now, kapag mas mataas yung temperature, or we go to higher temperature, mas mainit, no? Ang nangyayaring weathering ay chemical weathering. Okay? Kasi, kung maalala ninyo, most of this chemical weathering processes involves water. So, mas maraming tubig at mas mainit yung tubig, mas mabilis yung chemical weathering. Kasi 'di ba, heat is a catalyst for chemical reaction. Ngayon, kapag konti lang yung water level at mainit, there is only very slight weathering that is happening. Ang example na pwedeng mangyari is abrasion by wind. So, dahil dry yung lugar, pag humangin, natatangay ng hangin yung mga bato at mga buhangin, sand, nagkakos ng abrasion. So, depende sa climate, sa water, and sa temperature ng isang lugar, kung anong klase ng weathering yung pwedeng mangyari at gaano kabilis, gaano kalakas yung weathering na nangyayari. Another factor is mineral hardness. May mga ibang mineral na mas mabilis mabasag, madurog, powderized. May mga minerals naman na mas matagal or mas mataas yung hardness. Kung abrasion man, hindi sila basta-basta nagagasgasan or break no, ng iba pang mineral. Kailangan mo ng harder na mineral to break them through abrasion. Then we have surface area. The more surfaces exposed to factors of weathering, the faster the weathering will be. Diba? For example, yung cube sugar tsaka yung powdered sugar, pag nilagay mo sa tubig, sino yung mas unang matutunaw? Diba yung powdered sugar? Bakit? Dahil maliliit lang yung particles ng sugar, mas marami siyang, mas marami siyang surfaces na exposed to the water, comes in contact with water, at mas mabilis yung dissolution. Unlike yung sugar cubes, ilang sides lang yun, 6 na sides lang yun yung exposed to water, kaya mas mabagal yung kanya dissolution. So, ganun din sa weathering. Kapag mas maraming surfaces yung exposed sa factors ng weathering, kagaya nitong mga maliliit na peraso, mas mabilis. Pero kapag malaki yung bato, konti lang yung spaces na exposed to the factors, mas mabagal yung weathering. Klaro? Nagets pa? Thumbs up nga po kung kaya pa. Okay pa ba tayo dyan? Sige. Tapusin na natin to. Last na natin itong erosion. So sabi nga natin, erosion is the removal of sediments from their original location or the transport of the sediments. Erosion usually occur after weathering or together with weathering. Diba kagaya ng exfoliation. So pag nag-peel up yung rocks, nalalaglag siya, so may transport na kasama. Yung abrasion, pagtangay ng hangin, so that's erosion, tapos bumabangga yung mga particles with other rocks, that is weathering. So magkasabay na nangyayari yung erosion and weathering. There are several agents of erosion like gravity, water, wind, and ice. Erosion by gravity is also called mass wasting. Kasi kapag hinila ng gravity yung rocks, kadalasan maramihan. Diba? There is a huge mass of rocks and soil na nalalaglag through the pull of gravity. And it can be classified based on the speed. It can be a slow movement or a rapid movement. Usually, rapid movement happens with the presence of water. Pwede rin natin siya i-classify based on the materials involved. Kapag yung nalaglag or nahulog or nag-slide ay malalaking tipak ng bato. Diba? We call that rocks, less weathered or bigger. Kapag maliliit and loose fragments and sediments na siya, we call that regolith or debris. Itong mga regolith and debris na to, may mga kasama pa itong mga halaman, minsan kapag may mga bahay or may mga poste, pati yung mga yun natatangay. And then we have mud. Mud if it is soaked with water. Then the type of movement, we have fall. For example, ito yung cliff, no? Tapos yung rock na nasa ibabaw ng cliff, nahulog. So that's fall. Vertical or drop of rocks and materials. Slide, it follows the path of the slope. So pag inclined naman yung slope, no, magsa-slide yung rocks along the slope. Meron din tayong flow. Para din siyang slide. So along the slope, pero pag flow, it is aided by water. And then we have the creep. It also follows the slope, pero napakabagal ng creep. Halos hindi mo na siya makita. Mapapansin mo na lang yung creep kapag meron ng parang mga kulukulubot doon sa rocks or sa soil. And then nakatagilid na yung mga puno, yung mga fence, or mga poste. So, ito yung iba't ibang illustration. Diba? So, depende yan sa presence ng water. Yung presence ng water, pwede niyang pabilisin yung movement ng rocks. Kasi po, una, it adds to the weight of the rocks. So, kapag mas mabigat, from potential, magta-transform siya sa kinetic energy, mas mabilis ngayon. Diba? The higher the weight, the higher the potential energy, when it converts to kinetic energy, mas mabilis yung movement ng material. And at the same time, the addition of water makes the rocks and soil more fluid. And with higher fluidity, the faster the movement will be. So, yan. Mud flow, landslide, rockfall are some of the fastest land and rock movement. Okay, we have earth flow naman, ito yan, and then slump, medyo mabagal sila. At yung super slow na movement is solifluction and creep. Almost pareho lang tong solifluction and creep, mas madami lang water yung solifluction. Saka makita nyo, ayan, no, may tinatawag na mga terracets. Yan, nagkukulo-kulobot talaga yung lupa. Ito tumatagilid yung mga poste at puno. Yan, this one is creep. Hindi mo napapansin na unti-unti na palang nalalaglag yung lupa hanggang sa pagtagal-tagal ng panahon, makikita mo, naka-bend na yung mga puno at mga fences. This one is rockfall. Yan, rock kasi malalaki yung bato na nalaglag, and fall because of the vertical movement of the rocks. This is landslide along the slope and kasama yung soil, rocks, and other materials. Minsan, pati basura, ayan, kasama siya sa landslide. Mga putol-putol na puno. We also have erosion by water. So, erosion by water may happen along the surface, pag nagkaroon ng surface runoff, or under the river. Yan, we have the river or the seafloor movement of rocks. Surface runoff can be sheet erosion. Yung layers ng soil, unti-unting natatanggal, no? Parang sheets of paper na patong-patong. Diba, pag kuha ng sheet of paper, unti-unti siyang naubos hanggang sa makita mo, wala na. Ganun din sa sheet erosion. The upper layer, the topsoil, is slowly removed hanggang sa makita mo na subsoil na pala yung naka-exposed na layer. And delikado tong sheet erosion kasi kapag natanggal na yung topsoil, hindi mo na yung matataniman. We have venous or stream flow erosion. Venous, they form veins. So makikita mo parang may mga canal and channel na talagang mga ugat, nag-ugat-ugat dahil sa pagdaloy ng tubig. And may iba't ibang sizes yan. Kapag medyo maliliit pa lang yung channels, we call them real. Habang lumalaki, ephemeral. Yan, mga ganito kalaki na siguro yan. And gully, talagang meters na yung distance and malalim na yung na-form niya na canal. Hanggang sa minsan, nagsistay na yung water doon at kumukonekta na siya sa mga ilog. Nagkakaroon na ng stream bank erosion. Yan, ito example ng gully erosion. Ayan, makikita niyo parang veins, yan, mga ugat-ugat na yan. Diyan dumadaloy yung tubig at natatangay niya yung mga bato at buhangin at lupa. So, pwede siyang unti-unting lumaki. Ayan. Sa ilalim naman ng ilog or ng ocean, we have river transport or stream load. So, depende sa laki ng bato yung movement. Sa laki at bigat, no? Big rocks and heavier rocks tend to roll on the surface. Sabi nga ni Adele, rolling in the deep. Yan. So, we call the movement traction kapag gumugulong yung bato sa ilalim. Kaya pag nagpunta kayo minsan sa mga ilog or sa mga dagat, makikita niyo yung mga bato doon, parang smooth yung surface tapos rounded siya. Kasi nga gumugulong-gulong sila doon. Kumikinis at bumibilog yung mga bato doon. O, diba? Sana all kumikinis at bumibilog. Cute din naman kung bumibilog. Then, saltation. Ito naman kapag nagbabounce yung smaller sediments, kadalasan yung sand. No? Pag angat ng alon, tatangayin niya yung sand, and then babagsak ulit yung sand. Pag angat ng alon, aangat na naman din yung sand, and then babagsak siya. So, bouncing motion is what we call saltation. Suspension naman for lighter, finer particles like silt and clay. So, nakalutang sila sa water. Habang gumagalaw yung water, yan, naka-float lang sila. We call that suspension. Kapag tumigil yung water sa pag-flow, eventually, yung mga nakasuspend na particles ay magsesettle. Okay? Solution, kapag na-dissolve yung mineral sa water. Example nito is yung salt. Okay? Traction, rolling of big rocks. Saltation, bouncing of smaller sediment. Suspension, floating of fine and light sediment. And then, solution is the dissolution of soluble minerals. Pag sa wind naman, ganun din. Pwede rin gumulong yung bato dahil sa hangin. Kung sa stream load or sa river, ang tawag sa pag-roll ay traction, dito ang tawag ay creep. Yung pag-bounce, saltation pa rin, kagaya ng sa water, at yung pag-float ng fine particles like dust in the air is called suspension. Kagaya din ng sa water. So, yung creep at yung traction lang yung magkaiba. Sir, walang solution? Oo naman, kasi hindi naman kayang i-dissolve ng wind yung minerals. And lastly, we have erosion by ice or glacier. Para mas maintindihan nyo to, let's watch this video.
How do glaciers shape the landscape? Glaciers are frozen rivers of ice which have immense power. Glaciers are so powerful, they can carve huge chunks out of mountains as they flow downhill. This makes them one of the most powerful natural tools on our planet. Glaciers are sometimes called nature's bulldozer. Just like a bulldozer, glaciers shape the land in 3 ways. Firstly, glaciers pick up material. We call this erosion. Water flowing along the bottom of the glacier seeps down into the rock below. When it freezes, it opens up the cracks in the rock. This is known as freeze-thaw weathering. Then, as the glacier flows downhill, pieces of rock come loose and the glacier pulls them along with it. We call this plucking. Ouch! These rocks and stones scrape along the glacier bed like sandpaper, taking more rocks and stones along for the ride. This is called abrasion. Secondly, the glacier transports this eroded material as it flows downhill. Some of it is hidden inside or at the base of the glacier where it can't be seen, but sometimes it is transported on the top of the glacier. This is why glaciers often look dirty. As the glacier flows down a mountain, it gets warmer and starts to melt. Just like a snowman, anything which cannot melt is left behind. As the glacier melts, the rocks and stones fall to the ground. We call this deposition. By now, this material is a tasty mixture of rocks, stones, sand and clay, known as glacial till. The melted ice turns into meltwater and flows downhill to join a river or lake. Today, glaciers only exist in the coldest parts of our planet. But during the last ice age, glaciers existed in the UK too. Although the ice has melted, they have left behind some awesome scenery. As our planet warms up, many of our amazing glaciers are melting fast. So grab your walking boots and head to your nearest glacier while there's still time to see nature's bulldozer in action.
Alright, so that is how glaciers and ice cause erosion. So nagkakaroon muna ng freeze-thaw weathering or frost action and frost wedging. Natatanggal yung bato from their location, that's plucking. And then as it falls down, nagkakaroon ng abrasion, scraping of rocks. And then it is transported downward and deposited. So deposition is the collection of the rocks after weathering and erosion. Kadalasan nasa ibaba ng bundok, sa mga catch basins like rivers, oceans, and lakes. And then after a while, they will undergo compaction and cementation to form sedimentary rocks. So those are the different exogenic processes. Questions? Clear po ba sa atin? Sige nga po. Ano, reaction po? What is your reaction for today's lesson? Patingin naman po si Sir. Yan, meron na shock. Sobrang dami pa ng mga terms na inaral. Okay. Anyway, for your performance task, ito nga, nakapakita ko na to. So, weathering and erosion map. Medyo madali lang naman to. Screenshot kayo ng maps using Google Maps. Identify the location kung saan may weathering and erosion. Yan, bilugan ninyo. And then, ipakita niyo yung actual picture ng location. Anong pangalan ng lugar, saan yan matatagpuan, at ano yung weathering and erosion na nangyayari. Pwedeng actual picture na kayo mismo yung kumuha, or pwedeng gamitin nyo yung satellite view ng inyong Google Map para ma-screenshot yung picture ng lugar.